Cool. All right. Hey guys, what's up? Drew here with you. It's Friday. It's a beautiful day out and I'm so excited. Honestly, I get the opportunity to interview and share with you one of my all-time favorite people, Mr. Stu McLaren. And for those of you that don't know Stu, let me just give you a quick introduction. He is the founder of the #1 membership software for WordPress, which coincidentally, another story, Stu, was the first software I ever used back in like 2009 to create my first membership.
Nice.
Yeah, it was awesome. But listen, as a founder of that, right, you got to support something like 60,000 online memberships and communities. And so I can only imagine how much you've learned from that. And now you're coaching, consulting some of the best-selling authors, the top-rated speakers. Practically every online expert I've ever heard of references working with you. And so the core focus, right, is teaching all of these people how to launch, grow, and scale high profit recurring revenue streams. And I don't know what could be more exciting than that, is doing that. And so you guys, I'm just honored to share this this time. We got about 15 minutes. And Stu, I'd love for you just to, one, I want to say thank you for being here. And then just in your words, maybe share, like, how did you become this, the #1 membership guy for all of us? Like, how'd that happen?
Well, it wasn't intentional. That's for sure. Like, I'd love to say that I had some big master plan, but the truth is, in 2008, I had a successful consulting business. But the way in which it was structured and set up, like the only way to grow it was to give more of my time. And I didn't have any more time to give. And so that was problem #1. Problem #2 was that I had just gotten married and my wife and I were, talking about starting a family. And I realized, like, I'm not going to be the father or husband that I want to be if I'm like burning the candle at both ends, which is what was happening at that time. So something just had to change. And I was talking to a friend and mentor of mine, Armin, and he suggested I start a membership. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? Like, what's that? And he said, well, Stu, basically what you're doing for your clients, you could be teaching so many more people to do the same thing. And he said, but the difference is that instead of working one-on-one, you're going to teach once and now be able to serve hundreds or thousands of people. In fact, there's no limit on the number of people that you could serve, and it's not going to require any more of your time. And I was like, okay, I definitely want to pay attention to this. So I did. I started going down that path. And like I said, this was in 2008, and technology then was not what it is today. And I was quickly running into all kinds of roadblocks and hurdles, and I was way over my head. Like, I was dealing with stuff like htaccess files and server settings. And I was just like, this is bonkers. And so I was complaining to a friend of mine, Tracy, about it. And I said, I just want to teach, man. I don't want to deal with all this stuff. And long story short, he said to me, he's like, well, why don't you just create your own solution? And I'm like, dude, like, are you not hearing what I'm saying? Like, I'm struggling with the tech. There's no way I'm going to be able to go and create something. And he said, well, why don't we team up? And he said, I've been working with a programmer, Mike, for several years. He's amazing. Maybe we can create something together. So we did. And that's what became, Wishlist Member, which went on to become the world's #1 membership platform for WordPress. And so being behind the scenes of that, like, I'm seeing literally and interacting with tens of thousands of membership sites and communities. And I'm paying attention. I'm like, well, what are those sites that are growing year over year doing differently than everybody else? Because it was like this small group that were growing consistently year over year over year. And I'm like, what are they doing? And what I found out was, like, they were doing different things differently in terms of the way they structured the membership, the way they set up their content, their marketing, how they retain members, all of it. And so that's what I started paying attention to. And I took those best practices and started using them in different sites that I was creating. And we created 6-figure and 7-figure memberships. And that's when people started asking me, how are you doing this? And I started consulting one-on-one with that. And then I realized, like, again, the way in which I could serve the most people is by teaching it. And that's what we've been doing for the last 5 years. And we've helped now tens of thousands more in all kinds of different markets, from photography and calligraphy to fitness and finance and music and art and health and dog training and parenting, you name it. Like, the market has been served by helping people take what they already know, love, and do, and turn it into recurring revenue that not only creates stability for us as the business owner, but more importantly, helps our people get better results over time. And that's really the win-win in all of this, and why I just love what we get to do now.
That's amazing. It's interesting that our paths are somewhat similar. In 2009, my wife and I started our family. and we were blessed with our first child in November of '09. And I was in real estate at the time. And I was like, man, I have to find a different way. And so I started my first membership. It was called Web Real Estate Tools for Realtors. And we used
Nice.
wish list, and it served its purpose for that time, but that's why I got started. I just didn't want to keep the grind up and the hustle. And that's how I got into online marketing. And I didn't know you then, but it was your software that helped me do that. So thank you.
That's so fun. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, it's amazing how kids, they quickly bring things into perspective, don't they? It's just like you realize what's important the moment kids enter your lives. And that's certainly what happened. That was what sparked the shift for me, for sure.
Yeah. So, well, a question for you that is something I think I've struggled with as well, and people might be, is like, what is a membership site in terms of like, how do you define it? Like, what are the misconceptions that people have? Like, I'd love to hear, your definition of that.
Well, a lot of times, essentially at its bare bones, it's like a membership is where we're giving people access to something and they're paying for that access on a monthly basis. So, we're used to this now, like in models like Netflix, right? We pay Netflix $12 a month and we get access to hundreds, thousands of TV shows, movies, etc. We pay Spotify a monthly fee and we get access to all this music. We pay Disney Plus, a monthly fee, we get access to all this stuff, right? So at its bare bones, it's like, a customer's paying on a monthly basis to have access to something. And what that something is can vary dramatically. It can depend on, the type of membership and what you're helping people do. But essentially it falls into 3 buckets. Like if you're in a market where you're helping solve an ongoing problem, and an example of this would be like weight loss, right? Somebody is overweight and they want to get to their ideal weight. Well, that's not just going to happen overnight. That's not going to happen from, going through a course. It's not going to happen, the moment that they read it, or even when they begin implementing it on the first day. Like it's a journey to go from overweight to their ideal weight. Same goes if like you're in a market where you're teaching dogs, right? And you've got a dog that's out of control, biting, barking, peeing all over the place. Like they're not going to go from like this terror of a puppy to like the perfect puppy like that, right? Like there's an ongoing problem and there's a journey to that. So if you're in a market where there's a challenge or a problem that people are looking to fix, and it can be like relationships, weight, behavior, all that kind of stuff. Parenting is in that market, where you're solving an ongoing problem. That's a really good sign. Another one would be like if you're teaching a skill. So similarly, you're not going to go from not knowing how to paint to becoming the next Picasso like that. Or you're not going to go from not knowing how to play the guitar to being able to jam with your buddies around the campfire and be able to play any song that anybody, brings up. So that's a journey to learn and master those skills. Similarly, like if you think about it, you're not going to go from watching a few videos about swimming, as an example, to becoming the next, great swimmer, right? Like at some point, you got to put what you're learning into practice and get feedback and support as you are on that journey of progression. So learning and mastering a skill is another telltale sign of a home run hit for a membership. The third one that I would say is more about convenience. This is where like you're taking something and making it easier or helping people do it faster. Like an example of these types of memberships would be like, so many of our people in our community have like teachers who I think of like Patty Palmer. She's a former art teacher. And what she does is she has a membership with thousands of members, all art teachers, by the way, and she provides them lesson plans. So the art teacher, she doesn't have to like, he or she doesn't have to think about like what they're going to be teaching in the class. No, it's like handed to them on a silver platter by Patty. And so the teachers pay on a monthly basis, and Patty gives her, he or her, these lesson plans that they can then use in the classroom. So we see this. Another example would be like Andrew Krautz over in Australia. He has a membership site where he provides real estate agents Facebook ad templates. So the real estate agents, they don't have to think about like what their ads are going to look like or how to structure them and all that kind of stuff. Instead, they use Andrew's templates, and then they plug in the info about the specific house, and they're off to the races. So it saves them a ton of time, and it actually improves their ad performance. And so those are examples of like where you're creating convenience, where you're providing something for your market that they're using, and it's saving them a ton of time and energy and thought. And so those are the three big telltale signs of a home run hit for a membership. And the reality of it is that these can be created around in all kinds of different markets. And, some of the biggest mistakes that people think is that a membership is just a place to put a whole bunch of stuff. And people are just paying to have access to a whole bunch of stuff. Wrong. Listen, people don't want just a whole bunch of stuff. What they want is clarity and direction to go from where they are to where they want to be. So loading them up with a whole bunch of stuff is actually the kiss of death. It's the worst thing you can do, because the number one reason that people cancel from a membership is overwhelm. So you don't just want to load people up with a whole bunch of stuff. You want to get clear about like, how are you helping them? And the focus for you and I is to help them make progress in some area of their life.
Well, that's a great definition. I appreciate you sharing that with you. And I know we only have a couple minutes, so I want to try to squeak in a couple more real quick if I could. So is it possible for someone to repurpose an online course where their definition was they created a course and they were selling it for, $9.97 or whatever? Is it possible for them to take that and repackage that into a membership?
I wouldn't repackage it. I would think about extending the experience of it. Like, courses and memberships, I mean, they go together like peanut butter and chocolate. Like these things, like it is the natural next step for anybody going through a course. I think of Nicholas Wilton. So Nicholas, he has a pretty extensive course that teaches people how to paint fine art. It's a 12-week course, so it's a long one. And I remember getting a call from him. He was about like at week number 10. And he said, Stu, like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, what's the problem? He said, well, I'm getting all these requests from people and questions where people are asking like, well, what's going to happen when the course finishes? And chances are, if anybody is watching and listening that has ever run a course, like you've experienced this yourself, where people are coming to the end and they're like, well, wait a minute, like, what's going to happen? Like, is the community still going to be here? What if I got questions? What about the support? Like they start freaking out, right? Because the reality is beginning to set in, which is the course teaches people what to do and how to do it. But now there's this bridge that needs to happen between that and actually implementing it and getting the results. And unfortunately, like typically when a course ends, that's when most people begin implementing. And that's when they need the support and help the most. And that's where a back-end membership is that bridge. It supports people in taking what they've learned and then implementing it and supporting them in actually getting the result. So it's not about taking the course content and kind of rearranging it. No. It's really about extending the experience of it. And what you'll see is very high conversion rates. Like I'll give you an example, like even just with ours, we typically have anywhere between 40 to 50% of the people going through the course will then join for the membership, because it's a natural extension. They've had a great experience with you during the course. And by the way, you pour everything you got into that course experience, and it naturally will set up the sale of the membership, because people want to continue that momentum, right? Like if they've experienced momentum and got great results during the course, then it's a natural thing for them to think, oh my gosh, like look at the progress I've made during the course. Imagine the progress that I'm going to make all year long being part of the membership. So it's a natural next step. So the membership on the back end is not about rearranging your course content or loading them up with more stuff or teaching a whole bunch of more stuff. No. It's really supporting them in implementing what they've already learned.
That's really such an aha moment. Honestly, I appreciate it. It was kind of a breakthrough for me because I've done a lot of consulting, which is, retainer style, and it's great. And I've created some courses and helped clients do it. But you're right. After the course, there is that like, what do I do now? Like, how do I keep this going? How do I keep this momentum? And so that was just, to me, that was worth everything, is to get that little nugget. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. And here's what I tell you on that, just as a course creator, is that you will see more of your people get results, being in the membership, because that's I said, that's the period where they're implementing. And so it's like the most fulfilling part, in my opinion. I mean, the course is like fantastic because you're teaching people what to do and how to do it. And they're learning so much, they're going deep. But the real magic and the progress happens when they're in implementation mode. That's what happens in the membership. And inevitably, like, there's questions that are going to pop up, like as they're implementing. And if that becomes a point of friction, people stop, they don't implement. And so in a membership, you remove all those points of friction, and it creates this pathway where people get incredible results. And that's certainly one of the most fulfilling parts about what it is that we get to do when we share our info.
Well, that's amazing. And I think we're out of time. So I hate to keep referencing time because I could talk to you for days, but real quick. So do you recommend that memberships are always billed monthly, or do people have the opportunity to bill quarterly or annually, or is that not recommended?
Typically the two that I would say are monthly and annual. Monthly is definitely the go-to, because the whole goal with a membership is to grow the MRR, the monthly recurring revenue. Annual is great. The only thing that I would say about annual is that you want to be really mindful of a renewal campaign when the annual renewals are coming up, because people typically forget about all the value they've received all year long. And so what they psychologically do is they look at the price, the annual price, and they contrast it to the value they got last month. And what we got to do is we got to show them, no, like look at all the value you've received all year long. Look at the progress you've made all year long. So you just got to be more intentional with an annual option, but typically monthly and annual are the go-tos.
Okay, great. And so I know that you've done the 3 workshops, which are incredible, and I'll put a link below so people can go back and watch those. But you're also doing a live webinar, right? When's that? That's happening soon?
Yeah, it's coming up. It's coming up on Sunday evening. And what's going to be fun about the webinar is this is where we're going to show, like, how do you get started fast with this? Like, no matter where you are on your journey, like you might be in the early stages, don't really have an audience or following. Like, how do you get traction? And by the way, you don't need an audience of tens of thousands or thousands, like just a couple hundred and is all you need. In fact, many people in our community, like I think of Kelly Cairns, she had 59 people in her audience. She was teaching them how to use WordPress. And she ended up welcoming 29 of the 59 into her membership right out of the gate. And so these results happen all the time. Like Faye Cornhill over in the UK, she didn't have a big audience, 77 people. And she did a founding member launch which was 500 pounds for the year, and 10 people joined her. That's 5,000 pounds right out of the gate. So you can get started and gain a lot of momentum very, very quickly. And we talk about the game plan for that. Or if you already have an audience, perhaps you've been, offering courses and so forth, you've been building your audience. We'll talk about how do you quickly and carry forward the momentum from that into a membership so that you're creating stability in your business with recurring revenue. And if you've already got a membership, well, there's a different game plan for that, because, typically most memberships, they get off to a start and then they stall and they don't grow year over year. So we'll talk about different tweaks and game plans to be able to quickly be able to start growing and increasing that recurring revenue year over year. So that's all happening on Sunday. It's going to be amazing. The energy is electric. I highly recommend you come and join us live, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So that's all coming up.
Well, I will absolutely be there. And then just the last parting question is more selfish than anything, but I know mindset gets in our way most of the time. Is there some place where we can go to and look at the thousands of examples of people? You mentioned Kelly and all these people, and I hear you mention these people in the lives and other interviews. Is there some place we can just go look at all these success stories from people to get ideas?
Yeah, we started to build out a library because this was a request that was starting to come. Go to membershipstories.com, and you'll begin to see, and you'll see a bunch of people in all kinds of different markets, all different skill sets and, different ages, and it's amazing. So membershipstories.com. And then just in our group, like in our free Facebook group, you'll see, lots and lots of examples of people who are sharing, the progress that they're making and what's happening.
It's definitely inspirational, and I'm excited to launch my next webinar. Thanks to Tribe and the workshops and you. And so again, I know you didn't know it, but you were instrumental in helping me get started way back in like 08, 09.
That's so cool, man. Yeah, that's awesome.
So I appreciate your time. Have a great weekend. My best to the family, and we'll talk soon.
Cheers. Thanks, Drew.
All right, cheers. Thanks.